If you want to successfully auto-aim with the Brawler, you need to be close enough to your opponent so that if they're walking directly perpendicular to the direction that you're attacking, they still won't be able to get far enough away to not be hit by any portion of the attack. Now luckily we can quantify everything involved here. All we need to know is the projectile width of your attack, the speed of that projectile, how fast the opponent's moving, and how wide the opponent's hitbox is. Don't worry, I got this data for every single Brawler. So in order to calculate how close you need to be in order to successfully auto-aim your shot on another Brawler, we can figure out how much time your opponent actually has to run away. And since time is equal to distance over speed, we can just divide how far away we are from the opponent by the projectile speed. And this is going to be the time that they have to dodge the shot. So if we multiply this by their movement speed, we'll get the distance that they're running in this time. Now, if they were to successfully dodge this shot, they need to move a distance of half the width of their hitbox plus half the width of your projectile. So whenever this value, the distance that they will end up running, is less than this other value that they need to run in order to successfully dodge the shot, that means they're not going to make it, and they're not going to dodge the shot, meaning you successfully hit them. So we can just rearrange this equation around, and we get that the distance you need to be away from your opponents in order to hit a shot on them with auto aim is equal to the projectile speed times the hitbox width plus the projectile width divided by 2 times their movement speed. And anything less than that and you're good to go. Obviously all of these stats change varying from brawler to brawler. So I got the projectile width and the projectile speed from the Brawl Stars wiki page for all of the brawlers in game. Now this calculation is only really going to work if you're shooting in a straight line, so I'm only going to focus on those brawlers. There are a lot more complicated attacks that some brawlers have in game, but those calculations are very specific to those brawlers, so we can't really do a general thing like we're doing now. Now for the movement speed variable, it can be 2.4, 2.57, or 2.73 depending on if they're normal, fast, or very fast. There are a few other options for movement speeds depending on what buffs you're running, or if you're running 8-bit or Surge who are slower than everyone else, but this should account for 90% of the brawlers. So the faster they are, the closer you need to be to them in order to successfully hit a shot, so we're going to get 3 different numbers for each brawler. One for if you're up against a normal speed, a fast speed, or a very fast speed brawler. For the width of the hitbox of your opponents, this is very hard to estimate, but I'm pretty sure it's about exactly a tile. The easiest way to see this is just by attacking them with a gale attack, and you can see that either 3 or 4 snowballs are going to hit them, and 1 tile is the nicest number that's in between the size of 3 snowballs and 4 snowballs. So I applied this formula for every single brawler that we were looking at, and here are the results ordered from the longest distance to the shortest distance. At the bottom, of course, we have melee brawlers like Edgar, Mortis, and El Primo, who hit their opponents no matter what as long as they're just within their range. So the auto-aim calculations don't really apply here. They just hit everyone, but their range is so short that other brawlers have an advantage in terms of how far away they can actually hit opponents while auto-aiming. Just above them, we've got brawlers like Squeak, who can hit opponents from about 3 tiles away. These tend to be brawlers with a combination of a very thin projectile and a slow projectile speed. Then we have brawlers more in the middle like Jean, where you can be just under 4.5 tiles away from your opponent and still manage to hit them with your auto-aim shot, at least before your attack splits, and closer to 4 tiles away for fast and very fast opponents. A bit higher up we have brawlers like Piper, where the fast movement speed of your shot is really going to come in handy. Even though you're not typically going to get within 5 tiles of your opponent, it is helpful to know that this is the range where you're guaranteed to hit your opponents. Now getting very close to the top, we have a brawler like Nida, who just has a very wide attack, and so it's going to be very easy to hit your opponents even if they move a lot to the left or the right, so you can still be 5 tiles away from your opponent and be guaranteed to hit them even if they have a normal movement speed. In second place, there is a 3-way tie between Colette, Byron, and Belle, because their projectile speed and projectile widths are all the same, so you can stand 5.5 tiles away from your opponent and guarantee a shot on them with auto-aim, which is pretty substantial. And I'll get into later how much this distance is as a proportion of their total range that they have, so you can use that as a sort of measuring gauge. And at the very top, kind of expectedly, is Gale, who can stand over 6 tiles away from the opponent and still guarantee a shot with auto-aim, because his attack is just so wide. The thing is, this calculation was using an attack width of 2 tiles for him, which is how wide his snowballs spread out, but in the very worst case, when you are 6 tiles away from your opponent, only 1 or 2 of those snowballs are going to hit. So if we're only considering when you're going to hit full damage, we can essentially treat Gale's projectile width as 2/3 tiles, so taking off 2 snowballs from either side. And in this case, his range drops down to just under 3.5 tiles. So definitely not going to be at the top in that situation. But if you're just looking for any damage off on your opponents, then Gale is the best out of all the brawlers who just shoot in a straight line. But now I went ahead and divided all the numbers in this table by the full range of all of these brawlers, so we can see which brawlers have the highest percentage of their range that they can still hit even if they're auto-aiming. And here are the results we get from that. At the bottom we have Brock, because of his really slow projectile speed combined with his super long range means that proportional to your entire range, you're not going to be auto-aiming a lot of the time. So a lot of those long range brawlers tend to be pretty low on this list. Up a bit higher we get a brawler like Jessie, who doesn't have as long of a range but still suffers from a really really slow projectile speed. So you're still only going to be able to auto-aim at 44% of your range or less. We've got another turret brawler up a bit higher with Penny at 46% of your range that you can auto-aim at, along with some other long-range brawlers like Piper, Bee, and Ruffs. Then we get up to some higher numbers with brawlers like Stu, who can auto-aim at about 60%, though once again you do have to keep in mind that there are multiple projectiles, so you're not guaranteed to hit both of them at 60% of your range, so it is typically better to manually aim in most cases. Then even higher at almost 70% we have Mr. P, because he has a pretty wide and a pretty fast attack, so all in all that makes him pretty easy to auto-aim with, especially since you only have to hit your opponents once to get the damage you want on them, as opposed to brawlers like Rico or Colt. We also see Nida at the very top of this list at 84%, so you can be auto-aiming a lot with Nida and still get away with it, since you do full damage no matter where the opponent gets hit or how much of your attack hits the opponent, always the full damage, so Nida is a very good brawler to auto-aim with at most ranges, but when you are at full range, you do want to keep on manually aiming because they can escape it if they dodge it correctly. And then of course at the very top we have brawlers who are guaranteed to hit their opponents and are basically auto-aiming all the time, so those numbers aren't as relevant. I think we already knew that auto-aiming with Jackie is going to hit 100% of the time, as long as they're in range of course, because that is the assumption we're making. And brawlers like Mortis, even though you can hit anyone with auto-aim as long as they're in range, there are still plenty of times you want to manually aim when you're not actually attacking on a brawler and you're just dashing closer to them, or you just don't want to accidentally take a shot on a showdown box when there's someone nearby. So keep on practicing your red button mashing, and hopefully you've gotten just a little bit better at knowing when to do it.